If you want to get a medical sales job, whether if you're breaking in or you're looking for your next opportunity, apply to less jobs. I'm probably going to be the only person that tells you that, but trust me, guys, that's the way to break in. You do not want to just spray your resume out there and apply to any and every job that's available. It doesn't work. Because back in the day, if this was 10, 15 years ago, that did work, where some people would respond, whether you're just applying to jobs you're qualified and not qualified for, eventually someone's going to respond. The problem with today, there's too many applicants per job listing. So every time I post a job, I get anywhere from 300 to 500 applications. Okay, well now, meanwhile, there's a lot that are unqualified. There's still a lot of qualified candidates, but the ones that truly stand out are the ones that build relationships as they're applying for the job during the process. Because again, guys, you have to make sure that you're showing them you can do the job by trying to get the job. So that is, networking. Every time you send an application and fill out an application and send in your resume, you want to make sure you're networking with many individuals, at that company. So that's why I suggest apply to less jobs. If you're typically applying to, 30 or 50 jobs a week, cut that down by 10. Apply to 3 to 5, maybe 10 tops, where it's very specific. You're making sure that you're qualified for these positions. If you have no experience, focus on some of those smaller distributors, some smaller med device companies that don't require sales experience, that are just looking for, say, maybe a 4-year degree, or some that are just looking for 1 year of B2B sales. Whatever qualifications you fit, start with those jobs first. But when you send your resume, don't just send your resume out and think, just look at your watch and say, hey, I'm going to just wait for them to call me back. No, be aggressive. Contact the hiring manager. Contact the reps that work at that company. Contact anyone you can get in touch with to have a conversation. Because your job, just like you would when you call in a doctor's office, is to learn more about that practice, and that physician. So you got to do the same thing. You got to learn more about the company, learn more about the hiring manager, understand, what the job really entails. If you're looking for a very clinical role where you're going to have a lot of patient interaction, and this role really is more about, selling in front of physicians more of the time, or working with physicians in the OR, and you don't have very, very little patient interaction, you don't want to go into those jobs not knowing that, because you got to know that what the job really entails first. Make relationships with the individuals to know, what it takes to be successful. And then you can really sell yourself and tailor your presentation to what the job really entails. So you can't do that for 100 jobs. It's impossible. You don't have the time to do that. Nobody does. So that's why I suggest less jobs, more focused, but building those relationships simultaneously as you're trying to go through that interview process. Trust me, guys, focus on 3 jobs this week and networking minimum with at least 3 people at each company, making sure you're getting on the phone with at least 3 people at the company, and you're going to see the interview process go much further than spraying your resume out to hundreds of jobs.